Here are the steps that you're gonna take to buy a home of your dreams. All right, so the first step would be to get in touch with a real estate agent. I would suggest working with someone who's been in the business for a couple of years, who knows the ins and the outs, especially of co-ops. Purchasing a co-op in New York City, it's pretty challenging, and they've got bad raps for a reason, especially getting past the board approval process. So you want to work with somebody who knows their way around it. The next step would be to talk to a mortgage broker or your bank and to see how much you'd be qualified for. Specifically, the reason why this is important is because a lot of times people don't realize that they're actually approved, or they could get a mortgage for a lot higher than they initially thought. And the flip side is I've had clients who are self-employed, and when it came time to getting the finances in order, they actually didn't qualify for a mortgage because they didn't pay a lot of money on their taxes, and without a strong tax return, you don't qualify for a mortgage. So that's really important to know what your purchasing ability would be. The next step after is you want to talk to real estate attorneys. I myself can connect you with a couple great attorneys who've been in the business for a long time, but the real estate attorney, their job is to make sure that the investment that you're purchasing in one of these big co-ops or condo buildings is to make sure that it's got strong financials. Even if you're buying a townhouse, you want to make sure that there's no liens against the properties, or that the building has no assessments or hidden assessments coming up. It's the attorney's job to investigate and find out all that information for you to make sure you're buying a solid investment. The next step is to finding the perfect apartment, your next home. This process could take anywhere from 1 month to 3 months. And this is all based on timing and availability of inventory in the market, and also your timing and availability. I know we're in New York City, people are always on the go, so if you travel a lot for work, it might take you a little bit longer to find that perfect home. All right, and then negotiating on the apartment, this could take a matter of just a couple days to sometimes I've had negotiations that drew out for 2 weeks. But just know, time kills all real estate deals. I did have a transaction, a deal that I was negotiating an offer for about 2 weeks, and sure enough, because of all the delaying from the seller, they got another offer, and my buyers, we did not get that apartment. So you definitely want the offering back and forth to happen pretty quickly and not drag on for weeks at a time. Once we find you the perfect home, and we're ready to accept an offer and go into contract, the real estate attorney will then negotiate the contracts between the seller's attorneys and the buyer's attorney, and they will check with the managing agent for the buildings to review board minutes, financials, offering plans, make sure there's no assessments or any issues with the building or any liens that are unknown. Once that period takes place, and generally it's 5 to 7 business days usually, but ever since COVID, it's gone, I've seen up to 2 to 3 weeks. So there's just been some delays. And once all that's been negotiated, you'll give your 10% down payment to be held in escrow, and you'll sign the contract. Once both parties have signed, the buyer and the seller, then you're officially in contract. Congratulations. The next step after that is to begin working on the board package. Whether you're in a condo or a co-op, the board package has to be completed. The difference is in a co-op, you'll have an interview, and they can reject you if they'd like without any reason. In a condo, they get right of first refusal. So that just means if they want to reject you as a purchaser or a renter, that they then have to pay the owner, the seller, or the landlord what the rent was going to be or what the purchase price was going to be. Most condos don't have the money to do that, so it's almost never going to happen, but they do have that in place to protect the building from low sales. So if, let's say, you have a home that's worth $2 million, but you wanted to sell it to somebody for $500,000, to protect the integrity of the building, they don't allow those sales to happen. So the condo itself would purchase that apartment so it never goes public and doesn't devalue the rest of the building. So we'll work on your board package. In a co-op, in a condo, they're both intrusive. No place else in the rest of the country except for New York City do we have such intrusive board packages where we have to show all your financial statements from investment funds to IRAs, 401ks, all of your bank accounts. And sometimes they want to see a couple months back to see what you're spending money on and what the cash flow has looked like. So, and they also, in part of that board package, they're going to ask for 3 reference letters, personal, and 3 reference letters, professional. So you have to get prepared on who you're going to ask to write these letters for you. I would suggest asking your friends and colleagues to begin writing these letters at the beginning of this process of purchasing an apartment, just because of all the things that takes a while, sometimes getting family and friends to sit down to write these letters can be a little challenging. So with the board package, we will work on putting that together. And as soon as we receive commitment letter, you usually have 3 business days after receiving the commitment letter, which usually takes banks about 30 days to give commitment that they're going to fund the loan so that you can purchase the apartment. After receiving the commitment letter, that'll be the final piece of the board package. And board packages are usually this thick with every single thing about you. And I like to include an introduction letter introducing you to the board and just saying hello to everyone and telling them a bit about yourself on a personal level. So it's not just all numbers and data and, net worth. So once we obtain the commitment letter from the bank, we'll put it in with your board package, and then we are ready to submit the board package. We cannot submit a board package for both condos and co-ops until we've got that final commitment letter from the bank. They won't review it. They don't want to waste their time if you don't have a commitment letter and can't really qualify for a mortgage. So that's the final piece of the puzzle till we're ready to submit the board package. The board then has about plus or minus 30 days to review the board package and decide on if they want to interview you. And that's if it's a co-op. In a condo, they'll exercise their right of first refusal and they'll either approve you or reject you. And I've never seen, in my 12-year career, I've never seen anybody get rejected at a condo. It's just right of first refusal. Then the co-op, once they agree that they want to interview you, will set up an interview. Thanks to COVID, now we're doing Zoom board interviews. I've only had one since March of 2020, where the board actually wanted to interview my buyers in person. So, and usually because it's in person, it's getting everyone to the same place at the same time. Those can take a couple weeks to schedule, but thanks to Zoom, they're usually scheduled within 48 hours, and everyone can get on a Zoom call pretty seamlessly. The board's going to interview you and ask you a couple different questions, maybe review some of your financials. Just think of the board interview as a regular business interview, but the difference is, and my suggestion is, there's no need to give big personalities. We just want to answer any questions that are asked of us. We don't want to go into big stories and show them that we've got a great sense of humor. It's not necessary at this. And, when we're engaging with friends and they ask us questions, we can go on and share longer stories, not with a board interview. With a board interview, we want to keep our responses very simple. Something I like to ask, because you should always have a question prepared for a board interview, ask, what is your favorite restaurant in the neighborhood? Everybody loves talking about food and things that make them happy. So if they ask if you have any questions, answer with a simple question to them. Nothing complicated. You don't want to ask if they're gonna, be renovating the lobby or the hallways. Meanwhile, they just renovated 2 years ago and you've just offended the board president. We don't want to talk about stuff like that during the board interview. Not the way to go.